Premier Smith, welcome to the Western Standard again in this special edition of Hannaford. It's Friday, July the 18th. For decades, you've been a Heritage Fund militant. You've argued that instead of spending all of its resource revenues as it comes in, Alberta should build up the Heritage Fund for the benefit of future generations, and I think in theory most people agree with you. How long have you been saying that?
Well, I seem to recall, I'd have to go back and check the records, that the first column I wrote on it was in 2001. Because I think at that point, we made substantial strides in getting our debt to zero, or at least putting money aside to pay it off. We were at a point where we were reducing taxes, and the only missing piece was building that fund up. If I remember what I wrote about at the time, it was that if we had saved the interest and the investment income in that fund, by 2001, it would have been worth already $150 billion. And so I said, well, best time to have started would have been before. Next best time is now. And here we are, I guess almost 25 years later, and we are finally starting to do it. So I'm very pleased to finally be able to implement a policy I've been thinking about for decades.
So that was really good news this morning when you and Minister Horner announced that with a $2.8 billion contribution today, the fund has, well, you tell us, how big is the fund now?
So keep in mind, when we first came in as a government in the 2019-2020 year, the fund was worth $16.3 billion. Can I give a history lesson? Peter Lougheed put $12 billion in the fund, and then they were inflation proofing it modestly for a period of time. So by the time we came in, it was only at $16.3 billion. And with this additional contribution, it's now at $30 billion, which just shows the strength of compound interest, shows the strength as well of having a little bit of discipline. And I think what we're hoping is people will see that if we stick with this policy, absolutely by 2050, we'll be able to be at a point where it's worth $250 billion or thereabouts and able to generate enough income to help wean us off the royalty roller coaster, which everybody has been so concerned about for so many years. So I'm really pleased that we're able to make such progress so quickly.
Well, let's just talk about there are some people who are going to say that according to the fiscal plan released with the budget, spending is up for the year to come. Revenues aren't particularly. Oil prices are not that strong. Gas prices are about where they've been for 15 years. So do we have the room to do this? How does this work?
Well, I would tell you, I think my finance minister has a pretty good line that you don't use your RRSP to pay your grocery bills. You still have to pay your RRSP. You still have to pay down your mortgage, and you also have operational expenses. And that's how we're looking at it, that we can't be sacrificing our long-term fiscal prosperity and the future of our kids and their ability to have a reasonable tax rate on the demands of today. Now, when it comes to today's spending, you have to remember Alberta as a government is a service provider of some pretty important programs that people rely on. We provide healthcare, which is about a $29 billion budget. We provide K-12 education, which is about a $10 billion budget. We provide university support. We also provide social services to our most vulnerable. We provide infrastructure services. And so, yes, it makes sense. As our province continues to grow, as more people come here, more people are going to demand those services. So the budget will go up. Our solution is to be looking for ways that we can reduce duplication, overlap, waste, programs that aren't serving their purpose. We go through a process every year of analyzing that so that we can move money from low priority areas to high priority areas, and we'll keep on doing that. And at the same time, we also know, especially with the turmoil out there, the inflation crisis that we have, the tariff threat, that people needed a break. They needed to have a few more dollars in order to be able to manage their household expenses. So with accelerating the income tax cut, that'll put $1,500 back into the pocket of a two-income family. And we think it comes at exactly the right time.
Can't come too soon. Premier, you referred to the fact that you had been writing about this from your days on the editorial board at the Calgary Herald. And it seems to me that from those days, there are quite a number of things that you talked about then, which you're doing now, which is really rather a remarkable political story. But tell us about your passion that you once had for having the voucher system in the health system. Now, I know you've introduced activity-based funding. Does that mean that the person who wants medical treatment is going to have a little sheet of paper and they can take their pick of whichever hospital they want to go to get it done?
Well, I don't know if we will go that far initially, but I can tell you what we are going to do with the hospitals. Right now, we do what's called a global budget, which means we give a lump sum of money, and then the hospital is supposed to provide all the services, emergency and surgeries, and all of the support for patients who need to be inpatients. But the problem that we observed is that we were giving more and more money to Alberta Health Services, $3.5 billion more, quite frankly, since we became government, and they were doing fewer surgeries this year than they had done back in 2019. Meanwhile, we fund charter surgical centers on an activity basis. They got to do the work in order to get the money. And as a result, we've seen that charter surgical services have increased their number of surgeries from 40,000 to about 65,000 over that same period of time. So that just got us thinking, well, if it's working over in this area of surgical provision, let's do it for everything. And we've already done our first step, doing an analysis of how much it costs to deliver basic surgeries for joints at different hospitals. And it's pretty dramatic. We see that there's an average of 8,800 at some of our regional facilities like Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. And then it goes as high as $26,000 per surgery at places like U of A Hospital. So that is really illuminating. What you want to do is you want to find out what the best practices are, and then you want to share those best practices, and you want to get everybody trying to operate within a band for normal types of procedures. There's always going to be the ones that are complicated. We want to reduce complications, and then we want to be able to do more surgeries with the same amount of money. And I think activity-based funding for joints will be the first step, but that's how we want to ultimately fund all of our elective surgeries that are being done in hospitals.
Will that open up the way to more surgeries being contracted out to non-AHS facilities?
I suspect it might. I mean, this is an opportunity for AHS to really show us what they're made of. We have taken away from AHS all of the things that wasn't their core business. They were managing international medical students. They were saying yes and no over certain primary care functions. They were doing public health. They had Indigenous care as one of their areas. They were doing mental health, addiction, long-term care. It was all jumbled into all of our facilities. And so as a result, they weren't specializing at any of them. So now they are focused on hospital and acute services. They have an advantage in that they do the vast majority of our services right now. We've invested in surgical suites for expansion. They manage most of our hospital facilities. It's up to them. Yeah, if they want to excel at what their core business is, they will get more surgeries and more dollars. If they don't excel, then it will be other surgical facilities that we're going to use to bridge the gap. So I would say that this is very much on the shoulders of Alberta Health Services to perform, and we're expecting them to.
So what they're saying in the food fair where old men in bull caps gather to talk about the politics of the day is, fine, are the wait times coming down? Are the wait times coming down?
We're seeing that, yes. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but we were looking at what were the average wait times for knees and hips in particular from one year to the next. And this was, I think we've got Canadian Institute of Health Information Statistics that look at 2023. And why that's important is that they compare with other jurisdictions. And in those areas in particular, in joints, we are seeing that we're doing better on average than most of the other jurisdictions. Still not good enough. What we are aspiring to is that every single person who needs a surgery gets it within a medically recommended period of time. That doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow. It might not even mean a week from now, but most surgical procedures should be done within a few months. And that's where we'd be looking at it. We don't want anybody waiting longer than medically necessary, finding that their condition's getting worse, having to live in pain, suffering with a lower quality of life. That is where we're aspiring to get to. And activity-based funding, along with multiple service providers, are going to allow us to get there. The main thing that we know is nobody really cares where they get their surgery done. They just don't want to have to pay out of pocket, and they just want it done. And that's what we're aspiring to.
Let's talk a little bit about Ottawa. Premier, before the last election, nearly 3 months ago, you laid out what has come to be known as your initial 9 demands. Then you said you would suspend judgment on whoever was elected for 6 months to see how they dealt with it. Now we're talking about things like the repeal of the West Coast tanker ban and the No New Pipelines Act. Well, here we are. We're almost 3 months along from the election, and it turned out to be Mr. Carney. Do you think Mr. Carney is paying attention, and what happens on day 1 of month 7?
Well, the clock is ticking. Remember, they are returning to the legislature and scheduled for September 15th. So we literally are 3 months away from seeing whether they've taken us seriously and are going to either substantially revise or repeal these 9 terrible laws. And it's necessary. I mean, we want to get a bitumen pipeline to the Northwest BC coast on the national projects list, because we think that a 1 million barrel a day bitumen pipeline is going to be what we need to get our economy going, not only in Alberta, but also nationally. It bridges a missed opportunity that we had when the Northern Gateway pipeline got canceled. But in order to have a shiny new pipeline, you need to have producers willing to do the production to put product into it. And unless we get rid of an emissions cap, which is really a production cap, unless we get rid of all the policies that have led to a negative investment climate, we're going to end up failing at the exercise. So that's what we're putting to the Prime Minister. If we truly want to be an energy superpower, let's send the right signals to the investment community. Let's repeal the terrible laws that have impacted investment and chased it away. And then we can really start talking about what that collaboration looks like. So 3 more months, we're going to work with the federal government, but we want to see some action very soon.
Well, Mr. Carney would probably say, well, look at the action I've already taken. We forced through Bill C-5, which is how Canada is going to become an energy superpower and rebuild the country, which is a wonderful sentiment, but there were a couple of very clear letouts over Indigenous rights and agreement of the provinces, brackets, Quebec. So how much confidence or how much encouragement do you take from the passage of that legislation? Do you think Mr. Carney actually has something there that he can do what he says he is going to do?
Well, I was pleased to see. I mean, it's not usual to see the official opposition stand with the government on a policy. And the fact that the Conservatives did, I think that says that we all have some hope that they're going to be heading in the right direction. I think what the projects list does is they need to do something dramatic to tell the investment community, we are here and we want your money back. We want you to take another look at Canada. That's what I think the national projects list is. It's a message to the investment community that the approach is changing in Ottawa. That being said, it is a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient. We need to have all of those other bad policies repealed or, again, substantially revised if those dollars are going to flow back here. I mean, I'm not the only one saying it. If you look at the letter that the 38 CEOs wrote, they're also reiterating the same issues that we are putting on the table. So I think that the Prime Minister, he has done some action, but not enough. And so now we've got 3 more months to see if he's going to move on some of those other important issues.
Has he given you any informal cues as to how he's thinking?
Well, I would say we're meeting as we've got a government officials on our side, and they've got some government officials on their side. Remember, he's just got a new chief of staff. He's got a new clerk. So there's been some staffing issues that he's had in place, and so we're going to work the process. We're going to be patient, but we know that we've been able to put forward new policy and right legislation in a limited window. It is possible. So that's what I'm saying. I'll be able to maybe tell you in 3 months' time whether or not our efforts have come to fruition in a satisfactory way. We're still working on it.
So not last night, the night before, and the night before that, you were chairing 2 of Alberta Next panels, one in Red Deer, one in Edmonton. Looked like a lot of people went. Looked like there was a lot of enthusiasm. What do you make of what came out of those sessions?
Well, I was really pleased to see that there wasn't a lot of overlap in people in Red Deer versus the one that was just outside Sherwood Park. We sometimes that happens, that people get so enthusiastic that they just go around from one to the next, and we really do want to get an understanding of how different people living in different communities feel about these same issues. So there's obviously very passionate people who got up to the mic and made their points, and we're grateful even to the ones who don't agree with us that they're willing to have that confidence to tell us what they really think. We've had over 30,000 people who have participated in our survey, including over 12,000 that have written in, so that those are going to be analyzed to see if there's some good ideas that are coming out of them. But we do know that the 6 issues that we identified that we wanted to get feedback on, we've been hearing about those for years, if not decades. And we want to know if now's the time for us to move forward on some of them. So I'll be able to tell you a little bit more when we get to the end of the process about how the Albertans that we spoke with felt about it. But some of these items are very likely going to have to go to a province-wide referendum because there are going to be some substantial changes. And we want to make sure that every Albertan has an opportunity to weigh in on a few of these things.
Well, talking of substantial changes, you were asked, I think it was in Red Deer, about whether it was time for Alberta to pull out of supply management for dairy products. And you said it was an idea worth considering. Could you enlarge on that a little?
I've been annoyed for a long time that Alberta producers do not have their share of quota. It's exactly how this country always works, that they kind of locked in Quebec as the largest producer, and then they also have an increase in the amount of quota that they get as our population increases. I think I read recently that Quebec has 32% of the quota. Alberta only has about 7%, even though we're about 12% of the population. So if the idea behind supply management was that the producers in a jurisdiction are supposed to be able to be matched with the consumers, it's just simply not fair. And our producers, if they do want to be able to increase their operation, have to pay a much, much higher price for quota. So yeah, I'm annoyed by that. That's just one more example of the way in which a lot of decisions are stacked against Western Canada and Alberta in particular. So the person mentioned if we could opt out of the national system. And I think the implication was, could we create our own provincial system? And, I want to talk with the producers and see what they think about that. There's also those who think that we should move to a market-based system altogether. So let's have the conversation. Remember, these are the reasons why we're having these panel discussions, is that if there are issues that Albertans want to put on the table, and that was an item that came from the audience, then we have to give fair consideration to it.
Sure. Last question, Madam Premier. Are there any more ideas from 25 years ago on the editorial board that are going to be pulled forward, just as with the Heritage Fund and with the voucher? Well, it's not the voucher system, but activity-based funding.
Well,
anything else coming forward?
I mean, you know me quite well because we used to edit each other's work. But yes, the Heritage Fund was an important one to me. Also, transforming healthcare to make it more with local control, local decision-making, funding following patients, responsive, competitive. There's a whole series of health reforms that we're making in that regard. Also, property rights. As you saw, we did some major changes to our Bill of Rights. I've been wanting to have a clause in there that guarantees just compensation if government takes your stuff for public use. That is one of the big missing pieces that we had in our Bill of Rights, as well as protection for firearms owners. So we put those in there as well. Those are things that I advocated on going all the way back to my property rights advocacy. And I started as well as a landowner advocate, as you may know. And so cleaning up this inactive and suspended well problem that we have. We've got over 200,000 wells that have been drilled, and not enough of them have been cleaned up and had the land returned back to its natural condition. So that's going to be another major effort that we have to try to get serious about getting that cleaned up so that we can restore the relationship between our oil and gas industry, landowners, municipal governments, and make sure that we're prepared for what might be another boom. I want to see oil and gas production double in this province because I think the world needs more Canada and the world needs more Alberta in particular. And so we do that when we all have a consensus about how we're going to move forward together and balancing the issues around environment and access. And so those will be there's a few more bits of unfinished business that we're going to continue working on.
Wonderful. Madam Premier, thank you for being with us today. All the best.
You bet. Talk to you soon.